Hello class. There are several subjects that seem to divide our country. While there have always been differences on economic issues such as taxes, the more divisive issues seem to be of social concerns. These are the issues that people tend to become more vocal and animated over. You see demonstrations from both sides, and they're very passionate about the issues they're talking about. The controversial issue I'm going to talk about tonight is the death penalty. Now, the death penalty laws date back as far as the 18th century before Christ, and the death sentences were usually carried out by crucifixion, drowning, burning to death, beating to death, and impalement. The first recorded execution in the United States was in 1608. Now, over the past 30 years, the death penalty has been suspended and reinstated, and it still remains controversial. While researching the death penalty and arguments for and against it, there are four main points that each side argue about. Deterrence and retribution are the pro-death penalty points, while innocence, along with arbitrariness and discrimination, are the anti-death penalty arguments. Each side produces counter-arguments to the other. The pro-death penalty points are deterrence and retribution. The death penalty prevents future murders. Society has always had a punishment to discourage would-be criminals from an awful action, and that punishment needs to be harsh enough for the harshest crimes. Ernest van de Haag, a professor at Fordham University, wrote, "Even though statistical demonstrations are not conclusive, and perhaps cannot be, capital punishment is likely to deter more than any other punishments because people fear death more than anything else. Finally, the death penalty certainly deters the murderer who is executed. A just society requires a death penalty for the taking of a life. An eye for an eye, a life for a life. Execution brings closure to the murderer's crime, and it ensures the murderer will not commit another crime and produce another victim." Now, the anti-death penalty rebuttals to this is that the death penalty is not a proven deterrent to future murderers. Criminologist William Bowers maintains that the death penalty has become the opposite effect. That is, society is brutalized by the use of the death penalty, and this increases the likelihood of murder. The death penalty is not a just response for the taking of a life. It's an emotional impulse. Retribution is just another word for revenge. We don't rape the rapist or torture the torturer. Now, the anti-death penalty points are innocence along with arbitrariness and discrimination. The risk of executing innocent people precludes the use of the death penalty. Death penalty is irreversible. Capital punishment system is unreliable. Gerald Cogan, a former Florida Supreme Court justice, wrote that, "In my opinion, there have been innocent people executed." The death penalty does not single out the worst offenders. You may have a person who is on a death trial and they're assigned a lawyer who's state appointed, and he may not be well versed in death penalty cases. You may have the race or defendant of a victim. Studies show that the death penalty is given more where a white person is the victim than a black person is the victim. Where the crime is committed, some county may have the death penalty and some may not. The pro-death rebuttal for this is that there's no proof that any innocent person has been killed since the 1970s when safeguards were enacted, and that many released from death row are released for technicalities from legal. Paul Castle said the mistaken release of guilty murderers should be a far greater concern than the speculative and heretofore non-existent risk of the mistaken execution of an innocent person. Now, in conclusion, within my lifetime, the use of the death penalty has been argued greatly. I believe it's hard to argue the fact that a punishment or a threat of punishment has to be in place in order to deter it and maintain order. We use it at home, it's used in schools, and it's used at work, everywhere in society. People need to realize that there are consequences for your actions. Thank you.